Good evening. A little different time for me to be streaming. I don't normally stream on Thursday nights, but since some of my friends took the night off, I thought 8 o'clock would be a good time. Hello, Grace. Can you tell me how my sound is and give me an audio check, please? I'm so happy to see you. Hope you're having a good day. We have a lot to cover tonight. Tonight, I definitely decided to bring us up to date on a whole week's worth of testimony in the Sean Combs case. P. Diddy, of course, the diddler. Hello, Maggie. And the diddler, well, this case is actually just full of sensationalism and lots of drama. But you know what? You guys know me. We're not going to go there. There are going to be some things that we cover in regards to this case that are going to be sensational just because of the context of what they are. But here we're going to focus on the facts of the case in chief, and how well the prosecution is proving it. And hey, Mrs. Cassandra, my boo, you know this one's for you. You got me in this. And I have to say, besides it being fascinating, there are legal things here that make it a damn good case to follow in regards to precedent being set and to show some of the things that prosecution versus defense do, because it's almost classic 101, how the defense attacks victims, how they're primarily setting the tone of the case based on the order that they put the witnesses in. And we're going to go over all of that. Hey, Jen. Hey, book lover. Oh, hey, everybody coming in. It's good to see you all. I hope you enjoyed the morning off from the Karen retrial. I know I did. That extra hour sleep, man, it was like a blessing. Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. So everybody, get comfortable. It's going to be, probably a little more than an hour because we have 4 days of trial. Okay. And I do want to go over minimally each of the witnesses' testimony. Also, the prosecution released for publication several of the actual photos that are in the evidence of things that were collected at the hotel room. Also, we're going to see some images of bruising on Cassie Ventura. So, trigger warning, everybody. We're going to talk about some rather unpleasant things. And we're going to use the real language like we always do. So, well, let's just get to what we're talking about here. Y'all know, have you met Mr. Combs? P. Diddy, the diddler? Yes, and it's a federal trial. That means the government, the United States, is actually the ones prosecuting Mr. Combs, the diddler. And the main charge is RICO. And I want to concentrate on that because, I've been getting some DMs that people are shocked that I'm covering this case because it's just all for sensationalism and it's because it's so popular. It's like basically accusing me of going after clicks and views. The only thing I want to say about that is RICO. You know why I'm covering this case? Sean Combs is facing a RICO charge, and he's the only one named in the case. This will be precedent setting if they can prove the case that he is such a mastermind that nobody else is going to be charged for the wrongdoing of everything that happened except for him. Okay? And another fact in this case that makes it so interesting is that they are actually doing the RICO charges based on his relationship and the evidence found with Cassie Ventura. And there is a numerous amount of collaborative testimony that supports all of that. They're taking the 10 years of their relationship, or however long it was, as a snapshot of proving his illegal activities, of proving what he did illegally for personal gain. And for me, it's the first time that I've seen RICO used to just show that a horrible human being, when given power, does illegal stuff, instead of the opposite, that criminals form enterprises to do criminal activities. This is just a lousy human being with serious issues who then created this coercive environment of intimidation and violence and made it a RICO case by doing criminal activity within it. You know, in the two sides, what's fascinating is the prosecution is all, this is illegal, this is criminal, this is not right. And the defense is all, this is just men and women in a relationship gone wrong. This is just two people that abused each other in consent. And oh, wow, you know, you can't judge P. Diddy. You can't judge Sean Combs based on his freaky nature. But we're going to sit here and judge Cassie Ventura and call her the freak and call her loose and ask, you know, who else she has slept with, or, you know, just as an example, which really kind of pissed me off a little bit, and probably will all of you in the chat too. Today, the defense wanted to enter evidence of her in sexy clothing. For what purpose with the witness? Do you want to show Cassie Ventura in sexy outfits and everything? Is she not part of the industry? Yeah. Were you going to demean her character to make Sean Combs look better? Yeah. And oh, by the way, if you think Sean Combs isn't directing his defense, well, there was plenty commentary from every reporter that reported on day 9, which is today, May 22nd, that Sean Combs, when asked about, you know, going after witnesses and stuff, he was whispering to his lawyers and all, and they were like looking to guidance from him where to go. So when I look at it, it definitely looks like Sean Combs is still trying to belittle Cassie for getting away. He's still trying to demean Cassie because her life is better without him. And the testimony that comes forward on day 4 and day 5 are definitely going to show that, you know. So thank you everyone who's coming in. Hey, Shill. If I don't greet you when you come in, don't worry about it. I think my mods will tell you, when I get into this deep stuff about the testimony, I don't often look at the chat. So please don't feel offended or slighted in any way. I've got a lot of material to go through. And there's a lot of research and a lot of facts that I want to get out here for you, because I think you're all here to hear what happened in court, right? You want to know what the boiled down what the testimony actually was, right? Like, go ahead and answer me in the chat, because if not, you know, I'll make it briefer. You know, but actually I wanted to let you all know what each witness said in the last 4 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we had 12 witnesses that we got to go over. Now the first week we had Israel Flores, and we had Israel Flores, and I forget the man's name. I think it was Damien, but we had one of the hired prostitute dancers, and we had Cassie Ventura, and they kept Cassie Ventura on the stand for a while, and then the defense kept her on for the rest of the week. You know, hey Arnold, good to see you. Okay. Hey Charlotte, good to see you too. Okay, so I think I got everybody in the chat so far, but please, you know, mods, let them know if anybody tags me. You know, if it's important, tag me, okay? Because like I said, I'm not going to be looking at the chat as much to get through the amount of testimony that there is, okay? For those of you that want to get into more of the details, I do have a couple of suggestions of those that are following the trial daily that you can look on, you know, during the day. And 2 feeds that I found. Now, they're regular reporter type feeds, and they're CNN and the AP Press, okay? And I won't say that they're not getting into the drama or the sensationalism, because of course they are. because the media does want to sell, and promote, so it's not going to be like as straightforward, but it is going to give you detail of who's testifying, what they're saying in like the nuts and bolts, if you want to look at it on a daily basis, because I don't actually intend to do this every day. I'm going to be doing it once a week and breaking it down, and hopefully breaking down the testimonies to how it's going to relate to the charges, so we all understand where the case is going from week to week, how it's progressing. So if you're down with that, great. If you're not, well, sorry, not sorry. That's how I do things, Call me out if you want. I ain't changing it. Just not. Just not going to do it. All right. So I guess we should get started with our first witness. Now, I've used a lot of I'm not going to be promoting their faces and things like that. I'm going to use the artist drawings because I actually think this is one of the areas that needs to be promoted. Those courtroom artists who sit there and do the drawings every day so people can see a depiction of what's happening inside closed courts. Well, these are the unsung heroes of media here. They give us a visual, most of us absorb information visually rather than, our ears. What we see actually registers faster and more concrete in our brains. It's just human nature, So I'm going to be using them. And I think that, I'm using them for the reason that I really want them to get the credit. All right. Our first witness on day 4 was Dawn Richards. All right, let me pull up the rest of my thing here. Now, Dawn Richards was she was a member of Danity Kane, the female group that Sean Combs had put together back in the early 2000s, I guess about 2008, 2009. Okay. She actually testified to, and I'm going to just stick to the points of testimony that resonate to the charges, because based on Dawn Richards' testimony, she had witnessed an altercation between Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs in a residence. She was there. Cassie was downstairs. Sean came downstairs. He was very angry, started asking about eggs or something. Don't quote me, but I think it was something about breakfast foods. And threw a skillet, okay? And tried to hit Cassie in the head. And she went into a fetal position, literally trying to hide her face, okay? And she testified that it was very emotional. He did, all of that happened. And then Cassie got up, he dragged Cassie by her hair up the stairs. The argument continued. And here's the point. The next day, Sean Combs visits Dawn Richards and another member of the group who was there at the time, who witnessed this, okay, asks to visit with both of them, goes and sees them, and basically has a conversation with them about, this is just what happens in couples, what you witnessed was a bad moment, and then pretty much threatens them by saying, he said, if you people who speak out about this stuff and get involved in people's personal relations, well, they could end up disappearing. She testified to me that she thought he meant that as a threat to her life when prosecution pushed forward. Cassie did receive a black eye, a swollen eye. And she said that she actually saw Sean Combs inflict that wound on her. And that the whole band wore sunglasses because Cassie had to wear sunglasses in solidarity to her. But none of them spoke out. None of them reported the incident. Sean Combs had clearly threatened their contracts and basically threatened their lives. Of note, one of the members of that band, Danity Kane, was going to be a subpoenaed witness. However, she's not going to be cooperative. She was in contact with Sean Combs during his jail time, like while he has been sequestered, and that there was actually a transfer of money and an actual conversation about what her testimony should be. And so the prosecution's not going to bring on a tainted witness. And it was part of the obstruction and the tampering of witness charges that went against Sean Combs to make sure that he didn't get out on bail. Dawn Richards was on for quite a while. But the defense, when they came back on, their concern was to try to discredit Dawn Richards, okay? They said, well, he didn't hit her with it, right? And so she had to clarify, no, he threw it at her. And, because they didn't want to think that he just grabbed it and swung it at her. Like, that makes a difference if he was holding it or not. Because throwing it at her head is much less of an offense if he swung it at her head. I kid you not. That's where they went. The defense. Okay. They also suggested that Dawn Richards is only testifying to bolster her civil lawsuit. Dawn Richards, based on her own intimidation by Sean Combs, her own threats against her life, and actually interfering with contracts with her in the music industry, has her own civil suit against him. That's a fact. Okay. And so they brought that up and said that, she's doing it to relive and, to bolster her civil suit to get money out of Combs, and that she is actually biased in her testimony. And, well, in redirect, it was reiterated that, the things that she witnessed, they are facts. They are truth. She's not biased. Why did she not talk about it beforehand? And again, got to reiterate to the jury, because I felt threatened, because Sean Combs was sabotaging my career. So in their attempt to discredit the witness, the defense opened the door again to show how Sean Combs had control of people's lives and had no problem using force, threats, coercion, and violence to make sure they did what he wanted. You're going to see a repeated pattern of the defense not being able to counter that, because even as they try to go against the witnesses, it just gives them the opportunity to say why they never said anything and what Sean Combs did to them to keep them quiet. What actions made them believe that it was a bad idea. It gets them to testify about more incidences of coercion, control, intimidation, and above all else, violence. This is RICO. The prosecution could have went the sensational way and just said this was abuse, domestic violence, coercing young people to do things against their will for sexual profit, anything. But what we really have here is a pattern of coercion, organization, intimidation. A really not nice person. We have an imbalance of power, and that's what RICO is about. That's what this trial is going to be about. That Sean Combs, blessed with all this money and all of this initiative to start a great organization for whatever good he meant it, he misused that power to intimidate people and ruin their lives whenever he thought his reputation or something wasn't going his way or you didn't do what you wanted. So Dawn Richards finished up her testimony, and what her testimony actually points to in the charges is it actually supports the sex trafficking and the racketeering, intimidation tactics with the criminal enterprise. It actually shows he was threatening, people and using whatever power he had in regards to how he was connected to their lives, in this case, through her contracts, through his company for her music career. He intimidated Dawn Richards to keep quiet in regards to keep whatever he was making Cassie do. Because in that testimony, they were arguing. Cassie was actually letting Dawn Richards know that she didn't want to do like some of these things that he was asking her to do. And that was all brought out into the court also. And that's why it actually supports the sex trafficking, that he wanted that kept quiet. He didn't want anybody talking about that, let alone about how he was treating Cassie. The next witness, I'm just going to check for questions just in case. Hello, JC. Mipit. Okay. Hey, rabbits. All right. I don't see a question, so. Hey, Mousy. Good to see you too. And thanks for being on the Twitch and helping over there with those views and subs. All right. The next witness we're going to go forward with in. The next witness we have is a dancer named Sharay Hughes, and he's known as the Punisher. There was quite a lot of good pictures of him that everybody put up. He was a very attractive person. Okay. And the Punisher gave testimony of attending for most of those freakouts. He about 8 to 12, he said. He couldn't give the exact number. He didn't go through his records for the payments. There was testimony in regards to who contacted him. You know, Cassie. Cassie was the one that gave him the money. But she was very specific in the instructions. And one of the instructions given to him in regards to all of this was that he was supposed to ignore Sean Combs in the room. He testified he didn't know who it was going to be in the room, but that there would be someone in the room, and he was to ignore them and not pay any attention to them. Now, he did figure out like who it was, but what he really testified to is how Cassie would look to them for guidance, and how this person, Sean Combs, we all know that's who it was, but would give direction on what he wanted done. That there was a lot of oiling going on. And there was a lot of like really sexy role play, and that he was, you know, it was just to encourage, you know, some play rolling between the two of them with the baby oil and all, that the room was draped in sheets, that there was bowls of oil everywhere. And that Cassie constantly was making sometimes things like, you know, like something she didn't want to do, waiting to see if she needed to do it. Often looking for permission in many of the actions that she was taking with the Punisher in these role-playing things. He gave testimony that it was definitely being directed by Sean Combs. Now, that's a problem. You know, that's a serious problem. He also, you know, talked about, you know, not being able to talk to Sean Combs, being kept out of that. Cassie was the one who actually did pay him. And of course, you know, the defense is going to go after that, you know. Lays the wrong one up. 1 second. You know, sometimes your computer, I should actually mention this man's real name. His name is David James. Okay. I don't want to just call him the Punisher. I mean, that's kind of sensational. So David James, oh no, it wasn't David James. I'm sorry. David James is the personal assistant. Forgive me. Why are they not coming up? His name was Sharay Hughes. I did tell you that already. Okay, so he talked about the actual interactions with Cassie and how long they went. and everything. And of course, the defense was pretty horrible about it. They're actually going to asking questions about, whether or not you could tell if Kathy was enjoying it. And he did actually give testimony back that, that's not exactly, how he was, would categorize it at all. That particularly, he didn't feel that she was comfortable with it. He said he was specifically told not to acknowledge him, but he did see that he was directing it, and he did see that Cassie may have felt a bit intimidated. The defense in cross-examination was like, well, you made money doing it, right? So your participation was consensual. Oh, Mr. Combs didn't force you to do anything. And it was actually lucrative, right? And that's when they came out with how much money that he had made on it, and etc. But, when dealing with sex trafficking in prostitution, then of course, there's going to be money that exchanges hands. And of course, if you're exchanging money to do a service, well, they're not accusing Sean Combs of forcing the Punisher to do what he did. The charge relates to forcing Cassie to arrange it, forcing Cassie to participate in it, forcing Cassie, who's not making any money, to do it. Okay? By coercion and intimidation and violence. Okay? Which he didn't do against AKA the Punisher. Right? But that's where the defense went. They didn't challenge. And this kind of struck me. I don't see in any of the testimony notes, I don't get to read the actual testimony word for word, but in none of the reporting that I could find, did anybody mention that the defense countered what he said about Cassie seeming intimidated, looking to him for guidance or being intimidated. They just focused on the money changing hands to try to make it like she's the mastermind and she actually, wanted all of this, But the charge that his testimony actually impacts the most is transportation for prostitution and sex trafficking, because of the locations, because of going across state lines, because of who she contacted and how people had to move around. This is third charge on there in actually having those who were contracted to perform in these freakouts testify is actually evidence in support of that this actually happened. They crossed lines, they were paid. They crossed state lines, they were paid for the purpose of doing sex trafficking. Now, are they saying that Mr. Hayes was sex trafficking? Was the one that was trafficked? No. They're saying Cassie Ventura is. You have to keep that part straight. And the defense is trying to muddy the waters there. Okay? The charge is not that Mr. Hayes was taken advantage of. He's in a business and he did what he did. The charge is that Cassie Ventura was forced to do these things and she's being trafficked. Does that make any sense? Yeah. I'm trying to go in. Some of the day may be out of order because everybody had a different opinion on who actually testified when. But the next one up that I see is a friend of Cassie Ventura's, Kerry Morgan. She is no longer as friendly, but she was testifying to an event that happened in 2018. And it wasn't to Cassie. It was to her. She testified in court of Sean Combs being so upset with her that he choked her and threw a wooden hanger at her head and left finger marks all over her neck. He was so aggravated with her. She had witnessed so many incidences of Cassie being beat by Sean Combs. There's no other word for it. Beat is the word. She recalled an incident in Jamaica to where Sean had dragged her by her hair, pushed her to the ground, and had her head hit bricks, and that Cassie was like looked like she was knocked out for like 30 seconds or so. It was quite violent. She said that he testified as to the amount of control he had over Cassie's life. Incessant calling, emailing. Cassie was afraid to do anything without his permission. Was like, she would talk to her friends like, what is she going to do? But it was obvious that she was intimidated. There were days that Sean Combs would call 50 times in a row. There was no way. She testified she didn't think that Cassie felt there was any way that she could leave. He controlled her finances, her car, where she lived, when she came and went, what she was able to do with her career, which she often complained about, because every time she had the opportunity for an interview for a gig or something good to come about with her career, there was a beating. There was like bruising that showed up. There was a freak off that had to be done. Sean Combs was manipulating her to not pursue her career. He would much rather have her do all of this. And this is what Kerry Morgan testified to. Okay. She testified to being so intimidated and browbeat down by Sean Combs that he actually gave her $30,000 and made her sign an NDA. Just stop. Just stop. And she was honest about it. That's why there's no reports of the violence to police or anyone else. He physically threatened her. Then he paid her and made her sign what she thought was an absolute airtight NDA, but further examination later would let, like we all know, that no NDA can keep you from talking about a criminal offense or reporting a criminal offense. On cross-examination, of course, the defense wanted to go in on why she didn't report everything immediately, And she actually argued that since Kerry Morgan was no longer friends with Cassie since 2018, she didn't have any credibility. But the prosecution took back that. They directly asked her why they weren't friends anymore. And she said it was the drama. It was, constantly Cassie being in this situation. And constantly she's saying, like, you got to get out of it. It was out of control. And now she felt like her life was threatened. And then he's throwing money to tell her to get away from it. And now, she cared about Cassie. And they were friends. But if Cassie wasn't going to extradite herself from the situation, I mean, put yourself in the friend's shoes. Do you want to sit there and wait for the end? You know how this is going to end, right? You know what's going to keep happening. Then, she made a decision for them to have that falling out, that Cassie's going to stay with him, if she's going to say things like she loves him and forgives him. What is she going to do? The impact on her testimony for the charges. Well, besides paying off someone and having them sign an NDA, which is definitely coercion, intimidation, but there's also the assault on more than just Cassie. And actually, there was testimony throughout about the sex trafficking, the conversations between Cassie and Kerry that actually supported what he was asking Cassie to do on a regular basis, and how she felt forced into doing all of this, and how she didn't like it, and it wasn't something she wanted to do. She wanted to keep him happy so she didn't get beat. And that went on over and over until their relationship ended, until Kerry and Cassie weren't friends anymore. They just stopped talking to each other about it, and she couldn't be a confidant to her anymore. Let's face it, the last thing Sean Combs wanted is Cassie to have support, right? They didn't before on day 6 ended with David James. Wait a minute. I don't think I put up her picture. Sorry. This is Kerry Morgan. And this is actually a depiction of when she was describing the court artist actually put up when she was describing all the marks that he left on her neck and how terrified she felt in regards to the interactions that she had with Sean Combs, that he was angry and intimidating. And from his interactions with Cassie, she knew he had no problem laying hands on people to get what he needed. He didn't have respect for anybody that he felt was going up against him or doing something he didn't like. I guess to answer your question there, Rabbits, I didn't file this case, but this lady is a witness, and are they treating her as the accused? They're attacking everyone as the accused, even the prostitutes, as if they had anything, besides the transaction to do with it. But yeah, they're trying to get the heat off of Sean Combs the best that they can. But they are definitely went at Kerry. They went at Kerry Morgan, actually, saying, well, you didn't report any of the beatings and everything. And now you don't even talk to Cassie. Maybe you think Cassie was like, they kind of insinuated that Cassie was bringing it on herself or that she was making it up. It was like kind of insinuating like you didn't report it because maybe it's like not true. But no, she countered that back. And, when you think about the NDA and him throwing money at it, well, if it wasn't true, why did he throw money? I know he's got reputation and everything like that. But can I be honest? I mean, I don't even need permission. I get it. But to be frank, it's kind of ridiculous, in my opinion, to think that Sean Combs needs to pay people to kind of keep this out of the light, that he beats his woman, when he's bad boy entertainment. And he spent most of his career coveting that I'm a gangster. I do what I want. I'll beat you. I got a gun. Hey, I'm bad. I'm tough. I'm the worst. I'm the daddy. Get the hell out of here that he was worried that somebody was going to say he beat his woman. I doubt it. I doubt it sincerely. I doubt it ever crossed his mind, because it wouldn't do anything to a reputation that was what he was trying to build. He was the king, right? Gangster made. What? Make that make sense. It's like the biggest oxymoron in my brain that I can think of. But I just had to say it because that's just some bull. Anybody who thinks Sean Combs was sitting around worried about his little reputation while he's doing all this and promoting himself as the biggest badass in the world, what? Get out of here. The defense, like, they need a clue, man. Their client is lying to them on a daily basis, and it's evident. Exactly. But you stole gum when you were 10. Hey, they'll use anything. Defense attorneys will use anything. It's their job, Rapids. I get it. I totally get it. Okay. All right. Now that I've had my little soapbox moment, let's go on. Okay. I don't think these are exactly in order anymore. But I'm just gonna move it to the one who it is. Sorry, guys. The next one up, David James. David James is a former assistant of Diddy, and this witness is actually one of the most interesting. Okay, because this one, David James, started to work for P. Diddy when he was around 23 years old. And, well, he had to get immunity to testify because he still thinks Diddy's great. Even though he left Diddy years ago because he beat Cassie. And he says that that's the reason that he left, because he couldn't get how he felt about this man who he idolized, who taught him about the business and was doing all these great things and was so good to him in other ways, like gave him this great job and took a chance on him. while he had him preparing drug rooms, buying drugs for him illegally, carrying weapons. David James was a formal personal assistant who did a lot of crap. And there'll be other ones too. He still feels kindly about Diddy. And so he was actually forced to testify by subpoena, and he was going to plead the fifth, and he got immunity. And he thinks it was one of the best jobs he ever had, honestly. The learning of the business, how kind Sean was about him, like telling him how things were and stuff like that. He said that, he confirmed that Combs also had multiple women at this time. He gave a lot of personal details about what was going on at the time during Cassie and Sean Combs' relationship. He spoke to the event that actually led to him leaving, and that was when Cassie was assaulted on a private jet. And this is important. This one's important because on a private jet with multiple people involved in Sean Combs' enterprise, his business, whether, he testified to how Sean had his pies in so many things. He talked about the Ciroc deal. He talked about Revolt. He talked about all of these business prestige things. The reason David James thinks he's so fantastic, okay, is all of this, how good he is at business, how he's always trying to put, represent African Americans in a positive way. And he's always got this equality minded way of attacking his business ventures, He also let it go as a good thing that, every business venture he had and every contract he went into always was to the benefit of Sean's businesses on the side. As an example, I put forth the contract with Ciroc. He was the face of Ciroc. Okay, vodka. Is it vodka? I think it is. I don't drink it. I mean, I drink vodka, just not that one. But he was the face of it. There's a big advertising campaign. You would think that Ciroc is doing that with their own agency. No, all the ones that had anything to do with him were from P. Diddy's own PR company and advertise, like a whole separate unit called Blue Fame that was his. See what I mean? Do you guys get what I'm throwing down there? So he wasn't just the face of Ciroc. He wasn't like hired to represent, under a regular advertising contract. He was the face of Ciroc and controlled the advertising contract. Another nail in that RICO coffin. See what I mean? So, by David James, who is giving all this testimony against his will, but he's being honest because he has immunity and he needs immunity. He transported guns. He bought guns. He transported all kinds of illegal substances. He knew about it. He put it there. P. Diddy, he testified that Sean Combs gave him the money, gave him the contact, gave him everything in regards to it. What the hell was that that just happened? I just lost my oh man. Why does that keep disappearing on me? I have to pull it back up. But anyway, David James didn't want to testify, was honest about it, though, now that he has immunity, because they can't press charges on him for all of the illegal activity. But what he definitely put forward was that Sean Combs gave him the money and the contact, and that's important. David James didn't contact people willy-nilly. He didn't have the drug contacts. He didn't have the money. It was given to him by Sean Combs, and he was actually told who to contact, where to go. Everything was arranged by Sean, but Sean thinks, well, they're not going to nail me for it because I just had somebody else go deliver the money and pick it up. Not necessarily true in a RICO charge, because you're being actually charged with organizing a criminal event here. You're actually being charged with creating an enterprise to do illegal events, and you are asking everybody to do them on a regular basis. That's going to be hard to walk away from. I think when the jury sees, I mean, what do you guys think? When the jury sees that somebody is testifying like against their will, but they needed immunity because of all of the things that they did that were illegal, right? You know, do you think that gives the witness more credibility or takes away? Because the defense are like, you know, one thing I want to talk about is like the defense was like so pressing him on all the good things he had to say about Diddy. You know, do you still like him today? Did you think he was great? You know, and what really disgusted me the most is the reporting by everybody about how happy Diddy was and how he was nodding every time, you know, Mr. James said anything positive about him and how he glowed. And he was just like, you know, because he's the man, right? Yeah, because he's all that. Because that's the image he wants everybody to have. You know, that he is just the one. He is the king, you know. Um, but to me, it was sinister. It just showed how he was able to bring people in. And this kid was risking his livelihood. If he ever got busted with all of that, doing what he did for Diddy, you know, yeah, Diddy would probably get him a lawyer and probably get him out of jail, but he's going to be the one with the rap sheet, right? He's the one that has to go home and tell his mom at Thanksgiving that he's going to have to serve 2 years or so for drug charges. Luckily, none of that ever happened. Okay. But the impact, the defense just wanted to put forward that James' initial admiration for Combs was that he was a god among men. And that guy actually said it. That was his opinion of Diddy when he was there. And to this day, he's still grateful for the opportunity to work for him. But he did, when pressed by prosecution and asked, "Why did you leave?" And he said it didn't sit with him right. Like, how could this man that I admired so much do what he did to Cassie in front of everybody on that plane? And not a single person from the organization that was on that plane said a word. No one said a word. And that's when David James decided that they were all in the same boat. They couldn't go against him. You know, it, it was going to be really bad. But he did finally leave. He did finally leave. But he said it was a hard decision because like he's not worried about retaliation. But he did say it was something that could have happened. The impact of this testimony really relates very strongly on the RICO to the racketeering, to the firearms, to the drug trafficking, you know. He procured ecstasy pills and all kinds of stuff. Illegal acts. He showed that, you know, there was constant on the schedule as his personal assistant that the free costs, the hotels had to be set up, drugs, firearms, special things had to be brought in constantly. And then I want to share with you, I'm going to take down this actual presentation and just show you. I'm going to show you a couple of the photos that they had released. Let me see if I can. Oh, not this one. This one. Now on this one, some of this is from the next person I'm going to talk about. But I want to show like some of the wares and all that were responsible for bringing into the room all of the gear that Cassie had to wear, the guns that were actually brought into the rooms, always having drugs. These are right from one of the rooms of the freak out that they went to when it was being set up. How as far as the racketeering in the enterprise, the fact that all the weapons had their serial numbers scratched off. No, that doesn't look like compliance with the law to me. Okay. Multiple things of drugs and these prescription bottles. Okay. Very important. Having the names of somebody else on them. Okay, there's weed, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Like, okay, that's a lot of baby oil. There's all that baby oil. There's more baby oil than there is water for people to drink. I mean, it is a little bit unbelievable. I will admit that. It is a little bit. Okay. All right, let me bring that one down and bring up our presentation again. But you could see how, even though this man didn't want to testify, how it doesn't look good. They can't really use that fact. They tried, the defense, they tried to play up how great he thought he was. But the things that he had David James do on a regular basis, that David James was trying to settle in his brain. He said often he was confused, like, these things aren't right. But then he's thinking, because he's young and he's impressionable, okay? And he's thinking, this is just how the industry is. As a matter of fact, when Cassie got hit on that plane, the broken glass, because apparently nobody saw it, but they heard, like, he went to the back of the plane where she was with a glass in his hand. He was drinking, and he came back without it. And they heard broken glass and all. And Cassie even said, "And nobody, you all see this?" And no one says anything. She goes, "You all can see this." She yelled out like she needed help. Nobody lifted a finger, and that shows the control and the coercion. A lot indeed. Okay, but they're thinking this is so good for them because he had to come on there and get immunity to do it. But it actually shows the amount of control he had over people, the amount of influence he tried to put on young people, impressionable people, how he coerced them with money and the lifestyle and career advancement. And then if you didn't do what he wants, he turns around with intimidation and violence, threat, monetary loss. I'll ruin you. I'll kill your career. To me, this was actually one of the stronger witnesses because he didn't want to do it. He was asked, "Did you want to testify against him?" "No, I did not." He did not. It doesn't want anything to do with it. I mean, he still feels it was a good job for him and he appreciates what P. Diddy did for him and everything. But he's conflicted. He's conflicted, wondering how he can accept all of this, knowing what he knows, At least that's how I see it. Oh, before I get to her, let me go back. Then we have Regina Ventura, same last name. This is Cassie's mom. And this testimony broke my heart. Totally got to me. And when looking at it, this woman had to take the stand that day after David James hearing all of that. She didn't get to hear the testimony, okay? Well, she's Cassie's mom. And she provided rather emotional testimony about her daughter's relationship with Combs. They talked regularly. She didn't tell her all the gory details, but she took the stand and she testified how in 2011, when Cassie sent her information that was presented to the jury in an email, that Cassie was saying that when Sean Combs found out that Cassie was perhaps seeing somebody else, in this case it was Kid Cudi, which Cassie was seeing on the side and she wasn't telling Sean's about, and she was still in the relationship, feeling under control. Freakouts were still happening. She trying to break out. She did something, she met him. She talked to him on a different phone, whatever. But Sean kind of found out and he threatened her. He said that, if it was true that she was seeing someone else, that she was stepping out on him because, in his words, she was his to do with what he wanted. Like, that's it. And there was no, well, you've got other women. No, that don't matter. You're mine. And you don't get to do anything else. You're mine. You do what I want. And he threatened to release freakout tapes on her. And Cassie was so exasperated. She didn't know what to do anymore. She did the thing that nobody can ever even imagine doing. She contacted her mother and told her about the threats and told her what she was being threatened with and what was going on. And Cassie's mom testified to the fact that she was physically sick when she heard that her daughter was being threatened this way and what it was about. And it was just before Christmas, she said, and that Combs is actually blackmailing her over all of this. They showed the email revealing that Combs actually threatened to release those 2 explicit tapes because she was dating Kid Cudi, supposedly, and threatened to harm both Cassie and Kid Cudi. Now, this is the kind of evidence that you can't ignore, right? Here's an email from Sean Combs threatening Cassie and threatening to harm other people because she's seeing somebody, threatening to release recordings of freakouts, now admitting he has these recordings, now admitting he's using them to intimidate and blackmail people, now admitting in words right there for everybody to see that he'll go the length. He intimidates, he blackmails, he coerces. Regina Ventura testified that she took photographs of bruises of Cassie's body from other altercations. I'm going to share links to where those can be seen. I'm not comfortable showing those because they put Cassie in a vulnerable light, and it's something she's moved on from. And I want to respect her as the victim, to the fact that this is her past. And although it is part of the evidence and I do want you guys to see it, I'm not going to glorify it for YouTube. You know what I mean? There are pictures of her cut and bruised on her body in places. And I don't know how she feels about that. And I don't want to add to any pain of having to remember any of that. Does that make any sense? So I will submit the links in a second. But her mom had to see those pictures. Her mom documented them. Her mom was trying to protect her. Her mom felt so awful about all of this. Her mom took a loan out on her house for $20,000 to pay Combs for the money that he said that they owed because, he had been taking care of her. This mom paid that man to leave her daughter alone, and he still didn't. Her testimony was so strong and emotional to the jury. I mean, of course it's going to be. I mean, they have to take that into consideration. This is Cassie's mom. So they're going to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I mean, they're a jury. They have to look for concrete evidence. Well, I say that email definitely was. The fact that she took out a loan and that Sean Combs took that money at first, okay, because it was later said in the testimony that Cassie went back to him, that she ended the relationship with Kid Cudi after the threats. And then, of course, she kind of sort of went back with him, ended the relationship, did what Sean wanted, And Sean sent the money back to her mother. Disgusting. Regina Ventura testified that she was often afraid and scared for her daughter's safety. You know what the defense did? Nothing. They declined to cross-examine Regina Ventura. They know how damning that was. And they weren't opening any doors for her to be able to say more. But she probably could have said more. Okay. Let me just get the next one up that we're going to go over. There was... where is he? Oh, here he is. Okay, so here we have our next witness. I should check the chat. That was a little emotional. Nope, they didn't even say that, Mrs. Cassandra. They did not even challenge it. Yep, they didn't even. Quick question. If he gets convicted or prison time, will he be in a protective wing or will he be in Gen Pop block? General Pop doesn't like felons with woman abuse. He's right now, he's in like one of the high security because he's a celebrity kind of thing. But he is actually, because it's a federal case, he's in the same place as Luigi Mangione and the rest of them. It's kind of Gen Pop, but it's actually very regulated. But it's not Gen Pop like you would think about it. In the federal place, it's a little bit different. He's looking at life though, you know, and it's just something he's going to have to deal with. And basically, I don't know, some of those felons about women's abuse and kids things, you know, they are like that. But when it comes to enterprise, and if it has anything to do with while he was in there awaiting bail, how he organized everybody, there's evidence in the filings by the prosecution during the bail process where he was getting his bail denied and he kept trying and trying. There's evidence of him, other prisoners giving him their phones to use his minutes, to use their minutes so that he could talk to and to intimidate other witnesses and people so that they didn't know that it was him actually, but they did because they figured it all out. That he was trying to obscure who he was talking to and he was using other prisoners. He was passing out the money, the clout, the prestige, man. This man was organizing his enterprise for RICO inside the prison. So I don't think he's going to have to worry about that, rabbits. He will have prisoners that are paid to protect him. He will have people that he coerces to do things anyway. This is a man who can't help who he is and what he's become. And it's like second nature to him. He's doing it with his defense right now. Twice they brought up issues that weren't true in trial because he told them and looked like idiots on cross-exam when things were cleared up. Like, he can't help himself. My eyes got opened in the bail hearing process. The way they kept attacking that and trying to defend him, and he altered evidence. And he broke the rules of the prison and then tried to call foul. You didn't tell me you were going to, search me. First Amendment rights, bullshit. You can't even follow the rules in prison? Like, you're there. It's a federal offense. And you're that entitled. You're that above it all. You're the king, right? You get to do whatever you want. He's just proving the case for them. This man is proving the case for them. Okay, so Gerard Gannon is a is he Homeland Security? He's one of the investigators. I think he might be Homeland Security. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just figure this one out. He actually he was part of the ones who did the search and seizures. Okay. He provided detailed testimony about all the drugs that were discovered during the Miami residence raid. Like he was part of the Miami raid. He described finding a box marked with a gold plate inscribed with the word puffy that contained all his personal pills and capsules of psilocybin and all kinds of little illegal things in there. They found a Gucci bag found in a closet, contained various pills, powders, all kinds of illegal type substances, a plastic straw, $100 bill, and other items. He also found another bag full of money and more illegal drugs, cocaine, ketamine, a bottle of eye drops that tested positive for MDMA and ketamine. He testified about finding 25 bottles of baby oil and multiple bottles of lubricant in the closet, corroborating other testimony about supplies used for alleged freak-offs. Additionally, a loaded 45 caliber handgun was found in a suitcase in the Love Shack within the guest house to where some of these freak-offs and private things happened. So lots of evidence that the freak-offs didn't just happen in Los Angeles, didn't just happen at hotels, but in Miami. And when they talk about this sex trafficking across state lines, we've got Los Angeles, we've got Miami, and we've got multiple places in between. That actual testimony will definitely go forward towards the racketeering. Definitely the illegal substances alone, the guns, okay, all of that. And when we're talking about that raid, we're talking about, it was just March of 2024, a year ago. There were AR-15s, guns in there, and this is how the defense countered that. The number of agents involved in the case. Wouldn't you think that it's a little prejudicial and overkill to have 80 or 90 federal agents involved in raids on one man? And Gannon was like, no. The man had enough money. We didn't know what we were going to enter. We didn't know what we would actually encounter when we got there. After all, there were guns everywhere in all the locations. And when it came to his other home, his adult male children were there and had to be put on the lawn. And they were put on the lawn in handcuffs. There was weapons everywhere. They didn't know what they would find. They knew what they were looking for. But they knew that there was always a lot of people in this house. Sean Combs has a lot of people that work for him. He has bodyguards. He has adult children. He has a whole entourage that is with him a lot. And they didn't know what was going to happen. 80 or 90? I think that's reasonable. This is a serious case. But they tried to make it prejudicial. Y'all just don't like Sean Combs. He's too successful for you all. Y'all just jealous. I don't think so. Basically, the Homeland Security agent, his testimony, a lot of it is going to be about the racketeering in the sex trafficking across the state lines. A lot of evidence about it, all of the setup and everything like that. He talked about having actual loaded gun in the Love Shack where freakouts occurred, and that there was MDMA laced eye drops. Like, you give people, that's a way to take them, but it's also a way to drip that eye drops into drinks so that people don't know they're being dosed by MDMA. It's I've heard it in other trials. It's commonly used by people that just don't want to let other people know that they're drugging them. On the defense's cross-exam, they argued that although all of these weapons were found in the residence of Sean Combs, both in, on multiple residences, and especially in the one in Miami, they argued that there were never any fingerprints on them from Sean Combs on any of the firearms. And Well, one reporter's response in there was like, duh, you should have seen the Homeland Security's face when he said that. Because apparently the defense missed the part where all of the IDs were scratched off of all the guns. And these are people that they're in a criminal enterprise. And what makes you think that they would put fingerprints on guns that are just laying on? Anyway, no, there were no fingerprints, but hey, they were there in the house and he kind of knew about it. And he has bragged repeatedly through interviews, and we've all seen them, about carrying guns and having access. So I don't know where they thought they were going with that. Can I ask you, do you think the jury is going to care that there were no fingerprints found on any of those? Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? No fingerprints, right? Yeah, he wasn't joking. The defense was serious. They actually think that's going to be a thing. I don't think the jury at this point is going to think that's a thing. What do you guys think? Okay. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Let me find Miss Dawn Hughes. Okay. So after that, we get to Dr. Dawn Hughes. And some of you may remember Dr. Hughes. Okay. Dr. Hughes was actually a forensic psychologist that testified in the Amber Heard case. And she testified for Amber Heard. Dr. Hughes has done 60 or 65 trials, all mostly Me Too cases, mostly about interpartner relations in abuse, and has always focused on the victim. She has never once testified for the abuser, ever. She's very one lane, let's put it that way. She's victim advocate. She's pro, like, they can't leave because of financial constraints. There's many reasons. She often testifies as to the length of time it takes for someone to get strong enough to actually leave or to testify or to press criminal charges. She talks a lot about the coercive nature of the relationship in an abusive relationship, and that sometimes the victims are actually involved in hitting back and doing things, and that how it is like an eroding type situation that beats them down with self-confidence and helplessness, and they just feel that they can't do anything about it. And that's basically what she testified for the prosecution, that in abusive relations often have love in them, that Cassie could love Sean Combs and still not like anything that was going on, still feel abused, tortured, coerced, assaulted, humiliated, shamed. The victim wants the love back so much, she testified to, that the more Sean does this, the more Cassie wants to prove to him that she's lovable and that he shouldn't do this, and that no, she's not this, because it's just such an affront to be treated this way by somebody. You're kind of pushing back, but at the same time contributing to it. You're pushing back that, no, love me. Like, look, I'm not like that. Like, I don't deserve this. And then just trying to do what they want so that they love you. It's a total mind F, for the victim. And it's total control on the abuser's side. And she actually testified that actually the showing of love and gratitude when things are going well, treating her well, taking her to dinners, buying her gifts, just being adoring, actually supports that and actually creates the cycle that carries on. It's very reinforcing that if I just do this, then I'm lovable, She actually cited that Cassie's case is typical of not reporting, of going through years of therapy and then coming forward in fighting back with your story, so to speak, to help strengthen others so it doesn't take so long. That is typical pattern in abuse survivors. It's very, very common. So she had to speak in generalities because she did not actually, as noted in cross-examination by the defense, their big point with her was that you did not examine Mr. Combs or Cassie directly, right? You're only looking at what everybody else is telling you, you know. And she said she did have to admit that, yeah, she didn't. She did not actually examine it. And that's not uncommon. In the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case, it was the same thing. She was trying to speak about things that Johnny Depp would be associated with this, that, and the other, but she never examined him. She tried to talk about things that might be wrong with him and patterns, but she never examined him. So she really, really couldn't. Okay. Uh, she's not really one of my favorite forensic psychologists. She's very one lane. But she's accredited. She's got a lot of trial history. She made about the defense asked her how much she made. She made about $6,000 for testifying. She gets like $600 an hour, you know. But the impact on the charges of this testimony is that it contextualizes, it actually puts context on why Cassie was so compliant. It counters the defense's claims that there's actual consent, that sex trafficking could not have, human trafficking could not have occurred because Cassie consented. It takes away from that a bit. It shows that Cassie felt she really didn't have any choice, and that there's documentation and studies done, and this is long history in abusive relationships that show that. Okay. It kind of gave a little bit more credibility to what the prosecution is putting forward and what Cassie's own testimony said, that she really felt she had no choice. That yes, she did love him and she wanted to make him happy, and she felt the only way to beating and to get my career and everything, I had no choice. This is what made him happy. I didn't like it. I kept saying no, and if I said no, I got beat. If I said no, things were taken away from me. I was punished. It just takes away from it takes away from the defense saying that there was total consent there. Because you've got a forensic psychologist sitting up there saying, hey, this is typical response. Cassie's response to the whole situation is typical, and she sees it over and over and over again. Next, we get to Mr. Kaplan. Now, Mr. Kaplan is a former executive assistant. He also procured drugs for Combs via burner phones and cleaned brown crystallized power out of hotel rooms for Peacocks. He also had to get rooms ready. It seems like those around Sean Combs all knew about freak-offs. They weren't invited. Freak-offs were private parties, only invited guests. So far, in the testimony, the freak-offs consist of 3 or 4 people, one being Sean Combs, the other being Cassie, and then whoever they paid to be there to do the things that Sean Combs wanted done. But in George Kaplan, this former executive assistant's testimony, he actually was able to bring more behavior in by Sean. At least, you think it's bad enough, everything he's doing to Cassie. Well, now we're going to show a pattern, because George Kaplan took the stand and testified that he actually witnessed violence against other women with Sean Combs, especially another girlfriend of his named Gina. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Because George Kaplan and David James both worked for P. Diddy, I got the immunity part wrong. David James testified he wasn't willing, and he said great things about uh, Sean Combs, but he also had to testify to the facts about the drugs. But it's George Kaplan that was worried about some things he did that needed immunity. He is the one who actually testified for immunity. Okay. And he desperately did not want to be there and have anything to do with this case. He was subpoenaed. Okay. I did get that wrong and I apologize. There's just so many witnesses here. I should not have made that mistake. I'm not trying to justify it because I don't want to misrepresent David James's testimony. He was a big fan. He did promote that he actually wanted the job, and then he said a lot of good things about P. Diddy, and he actually left the job because of what happened with Cassie. All of that was the same. The only thing that's different is that he didn't have immunity to testify. He did say a lot of glowing things, but under direct by the prosecution, he was forced to actually talk about the drugs and the paid and the things that he had to buy under order for him. All of that part of the testimony is the same. Just the immunity part. That part of my note is mixed up. That goes with George Kaplan. So George Kaplan, his testimony wasn't as long. He wasn't on the stand. He actually testified to certain events, testified to the drugs, hotel rooms, what they looked like, what he saw while he was there, how he had to clean rooms up, how they used burner phones on a regular to make arrangements about things, how he has had to clean up drug residues and everything before the rooms were turned back over to the hotel, to make sure there wasn't anything incriminating in there. He testified to the witness of him being violent to others besides Cassie, this one girlfriend named Gina. And that was prominent because it does show a bit of a pattern to his violence, his intimidating nature, his coercion of others. Okay. Not to mention all of the stuff on the racketeering, on how people that work for him. Let's make this clear about the racketeering. We've heard testimony by several people now about if you work for Sean Combs, he gets you to do stuff that's illegal. That's racketeering, criminal enterprise. This is the prosecution building that case. This is how RICO will be proved. Even with an unwilling witness like George Kaplan, who needed immunity to testify because he wanted to just plead the fifth, because he knows all of the stuff that he did for Sean Combs is illegal, that he knew about the drugs, he knows about the girls, he knows what he's doing to people. He knows about the freak offs. He hears things. He sees things that he knows aren't right. And he doesn't want to go to jail for them. I don't blame him. So the defense, of course, they're going to hit on that. Oh, you're testifying under immunity, right? And he's like, right. I desperately did not want to be here. He was forced to testify because, well, if not, what do you think was going to happen to him? What do you think would have happened to David James if he didn't agree to testify with the prosecution? If they were part of that enterprise and the prosecution has any evidence of what they did themselves and they don't cooperate with the prosecution, what do you think will happen to them? I mean, that's seriously. We'll let you off this once. Thank you for the grace, Mrs. Cassandra. I didn't mean to mess up your... The defense may as well be having to convince an astronaut that the Earth is flat. You know what? They'd have a better chance of that than trying to prove that Sean Combs is a nice guy. I can't wait for them to put their case up. I wonder what it's going to be. It's going to be rather amusing, but I got to get through these next one. I could go on and on and on. Okay, so Regina, George. Okay, I think that brings us through to day 9. Okay, now day 9 is very interesting because, we've kind of hit on the issue of, Scott Mescudi. For those of you that don't know, that's a legal name of Kid Cudi. And that, way back in 2011, he had a relationship with Cassie Ventura. And, well, he didn't know that Cassie was still with Sean Combs. And he says that clearly, that Cassie hid that from him. When they started their relationship, Cassie Ventura told him that her and Sean had broken up and she was free to pursue a relationship. It appears through the testimony from what the reporters are saying that Kid Cudi fell in love with her. He believed her. He feels duped by her in a way. She was communicating with him only through a burner phone. She was trying to hide the relationship. And well, things happened because of it. Violence. I mean, his car got a Molotov cocktail. They cut the roof of it and dropped a Molotov cocktail inside his very expensive car. There was, this was some of the most entertaining for the reporters and everybody covering the trial, because like there was all this stuff about his dog being upset. It was locked in the bathroom, that Christmas gifts in his house when they broke into it were opened, that he was being threatened and intimidated in ways, that his dog was never the same. And the kind of judge, kind of laughingly said the dog isn't going to testify to that, is he? And ever since then, like every time they mentioned the dog, like the attorneys and Kid Cudi and the judge had a little chuckle about it. They tried to make light. I mean, Kid Cudi's an affable, friendly kind of guy, and it was serious testimony that he was trying to make not as ominous as it was. Okay. He had a meeting with Sean after that. He was threatened. His house was violated. His car was set on fire. Cassie did break. They stopped talking and the relationship ended. He does feel like she wasn't honest with him. She didn't tell him she was still in a relationship. He met with Sean at a later date and talked about Sean standing there like some kind of Marvel villain. That was the quote, but would not admit to anything to do about his car when, he said, well, that was my girl. And they talked and they said, well, that's all right. They just said, well, everything was going to stop. They did meet. Nobody was threatening anybody outright. What, Kid Cudi did say he didn't believe Sean when Sean said he didn't know anything about what happened to his car. Because after all, Kid Cudi said to him, who's going to pay for my car? He said right out, and he claimed to know nothing about it. It was a tense confrontation, but not really a confrontation. There were other people around. He said that when he got there for this meeting, that Sean was looking out the window like some Marvel supervillain, But he claimed not to know anything about that. But he did say that he was upset, about him seeing his girl and all. So he does admit that he knew about the relationship. And well, it seems like after that meeting, all of the break-ins to Kid Cudi's house stopped. Kid Cudi did say that his dog hasn't been the same since being locked in a bathroom and terrorized with people trashing up the house and stuff and opening Christmas presents and things of the like. Now, this all ties into the fact that the email was sent around Christmas of 2011 threatening Cassie going back to Sean, where the money was returned to her mother, and the threats to release the videos stopped, and also the violence against Kid Cudi stopped. The intimidation, the breaking into his house and home, and firebombing, nothing happened after that once Cassie returned to Sean's side. So the defense, of course, is going to attack this. Was there any evidence was Sean Combs ever charged with the break into your home? Of course not. There were no criminal charges. Was any evidence ever found that linked Sean Combs to conclusively linked to your car bombing? or your car fire, rather, not a bomb, a fire. That's it. No, because they could not find enough against him. But did Sean brag about it? Did he tell Cassie? Did Cassie actually talk about it to others? Yeah. Oh, Sean's not one to keep his mouth shut. We know that, okay, from other incidences of people dying and bad things happening, where he likes to drop little innuendos like he could have had something to do about it because it bolsters his image, and he'll say, well, that's just what you do to bolster your image. But then when you have the actual events happening, that kind of gives prosecution a little inkling that, yeah, you probably really did have something to do with it. But it is a fact. He was never prosecuted for that fire or the break-in or intimidating nature of all of the interactions with Kid Cudi. But you'll think, well, that's all quite entertaining, and that's something we all saw play out in 2011. It was in the headlines, Cassie, Sean, Kid Cudi, everything was laid all out there at the time. Well, what impact does that actually have on the charges here all these years later, 14 years later? What does that mean? Well, showing retaliatory violence to people that don't do what you want, well, that's a predicated act and demonstrates clear racketeering. Well, if Sean wasn't the one inside the house opening the Christmas presents and terrorizing the dog, who was? They would have been people that worked for Sean Combs or people that Sean Combs actually hired to do it. If Sean Combs didn't drop that Molotov cocktail through the roof of Kid Cudi's car, definitely somebody connected with him did. Because who else would have known that Cassie Ventura was dating him? Who else had any need to do that, to want to get Cassie back? Who else would have benefited from such acts? Not the random stranger, not the random stalker. No, well, smells like coordinated effort to me. What do you guys think? I forgot to change the picture again. You guys are going to have to fire me. Definitely. No, Kid Cudi actually took this with a grain of salt when they pushed back on him. Prosecution cleared up all of the facts, like who would have had a benefit. Did Sean Combs know you were dating? Yes, yes, yes. Did Cassie say that she felt threatened? Yes. Did Cassie tell you about abuse from Sean? Yes. Did did she feel fear? Yes. You know, because also in the evidence with this testimony was that Cassie talked to him about it, and that she is talking to third parties about feeling coerced and fear and intimidation, and that he just didn't treat her right in the relationship, and she needed to get away. But her career, but her finance, if he finds out stuff, like, he's not good, but we're not a thing anymore. And that is why Kid Cudi feels played, because she played on his sympathies, definitely. She may have cared for him. We didn't really get to hear about that testimony. She said she did enjoy dating with him and she did care about him, but they didn't talk about love or commitment or anything like that. And then she had to admit during her testimony that she did go back to Sean. Well, she also said in her testimony why she went back to Sean. Because he clearly threatened her life and Kid Cudi's life. He threatened to expose her and humiliate her to millions of people with freak-off videos. And that he was in contact with her mother, threatening to expose everything to her too. Horrible situation for Cassie Ventura to be in. Well, she's talking to other people about it. She told her mom. She's telling Kid Cudi. She's finally telling people. She had told Kerry about it. She had told many people close to her, but she also wouldn't do anything about it, which caused frustration to a lot of people in her life and had people moving on. After that, on today, we heard from a makeup artist, Mila Morales, who did a lot of work for P. Diddy and met Cassie Ventura and then started working for her. Now, she moved on from working with P. Diddy because she was getting more popular and she had quite a few clients and etc. However, she did witness quite a few things. She witnessed a lot of violence. She witnessed a incident after a Prince concert. Um, she had gone back to her hotel room with Cassie after the concert. Everybody was there together. Sean Combs was not there yet, but he showed up at the hotel, at their room, came in aggressively, was pulled Cassie aside, was very aggressive with her, very physical with her. She wasn't doing something that he wanted, and he beat her. And Mila Morales took her home to her house after he left because he beat her, upset, not satisfied with whatever was going on. And then he left, and they decided not to stay at the hotel. And Mila Morales took her home to her house. Um, when he entered the hotel, he was screaming, "Where is she?" When he entered the room, he actually took Cassie into the bedroom of the hotel there and closed the door. Morales could not visibly see the altercation, but she heard. She heard things. She heard him yelling and screaming from outside of the room. Um, when he finally left the room, uh, Morales described Cassie as distraught with visible injuries. She had knots on her head, a swollen lip, and a busted eye. Um, she immediately knew something horrible happened, but Cassie did not want to call anyone. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She didn't want to call the police. So Cassie, uh, luckily for her, Morales took her home to her house and let her recover there for a few days, and actually called the doctor in to check her out. And that doctor recommended she go to the ER, but she refused, that she needed to be checked out because of the knots on her head. She should get an x-ray and things like that, make sure she didn't have a concussion. Morales said that she thought the reason Cassie didn't do any of that was fear of what Combs would do. She actually worked with Cassie until 2021. And she felt like she had a relationship with Cassie like a friend, but like a little sister. She was younger than her, and she felt protective towards her, and she thought she was in a really horrible situation. On the cross-examination of of the hairdresser was just, or the makeup artist rather, was that Morales didn't witness the physical altercation, only the aftermath. They also noticed that Morales had spoken to media outlets over the last year since the raids on Diddy's home. And, well, at first, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Oh my God, she's like talking to the media and everything. What is the prosecution going to do about that? She didn't witness him laying hands. Here's what the prosecution did on direct. They're like, did Cassie Ventura have any visible injuries when she entered the room with Sean Combs? No. Did Cassie Ventura have any physical injuries when she exited the room after being in there with Sean Combs? Yes. Dot, dot, dot. It doesn't take much. Do you think the jury cares that this witness didn't actually see him hit her? Do you think the jury thinks that Cassie blackened her own eye, put knots on her own head? There wasn't even time. Also, in countering about the interviews, she reminded the defense that she had not been paid for one of them, that this was a sensational thing and the truth needed to come out. She did have information that was pertinent, and how else was she going to get anybody to know? She wasn't sure that Cassie said that she had told the prosecution about certain things. Well, she definitely was going to talk about them. After all, she's being named in numerous civil suits about seeing things. So why wouldn't she? She wasn't paid for a single interview. She works in the industry. Yes. She's a celebrity makeup artist, you know. It's just as damning for her that Sean would actually put the black ball on her about clients. And this was one of her concerns. I don't blame her for going to the press. Get her name out there. So when she's blackballed, they know why. That she's talking about things Sean doesn't want out there, and that looks bad for him. I don't blame her. But, you know, the jury is going to have to weigh that testimony now because of the interviews. You know, they're going to wonder if she had any financial gain, just like they do in regards to Cassie's testimony in regards to receiving money from P. Diddy and from the hotel in regards to the violence. But all of this testimony from the makeup artist collaborates accounts that Cassie has given in her testimony about injuries and incidences. This is one like the one with Dawn Richards that actually has someone else who saw it, like the one with David James on the on the airplane, the private jet, like the one with Dawn Richards in the kitchen with the frying pan, you know, and multiple others, like the one in this hotel room. These are all independently corroborated incidences of violence and coercion and intimidation. And they're going to actually it actually impacts the sex trafficking claim. You know, it supports the prosecutor's narrative that Cassie is subject to ongoing physical abuse and intimidation, which is relevant to them establishing the coercion and lack of consent for the sex trafficking charges. It actually contributes to racketeering because her account shows Cassie's injuries and the fear that prevented both of them, Cassie and Morales, from contacting the authorities. It reinforces the prosecution's claims that this is a criminal enterprise that uses violence and intimidation to silence victims and witnesses. Just another incident where nobody would speak up because of what Sean Combs would do. It is also another part of assault and intimate partner violence that shows the intimidation onto why Cassie stayed as long as she did. It contributes to that cycle that we were talking about where she's in a relationship, she feels she loves him, he treats her bad, then he treats her well, and it's a vicious cycle because all she wants to be is loved. And she has total control. There is a complete displacement of power and authority in this relationship. Need I remind you how young she was when she met him? How inexperienced she said she was when she met him. How he's introducing her to this lifestyle and also this horrible cycle of abuse and violence. It actually will lead to collaborating, you know, and reinforcing that lack of consent that is really paramount to those sex trafficking charges, you know. But just the behavior on its own of Sean Combs actually leads more credibility to the racketeering charges. Absolutely. Just how he reacts to everything. I mean, his actions are definitely the nail in the coffin for all of this. Miss Morales' testimony is pretty important. It seems like a small incident, but it provides independent professional corroboration of Cassie Ventura's injuries. She's a paid professional in the field. Talking about this is damaging to her career. Okay, she had exposure to Sean Combs as a person and Cassie Ventura as people and as clients and others. Okay, she actually saw injuries immediately after an assault. She expressed fear of Cassie not contacting the police and not actually doing anything about it. You know, it illustrates that climate of intimidation that multiple witnesses see what's going on, but everybody is in fear of intimidation and retaliation by Sean Combs. It actually supports the prosecution's claim regarding violence, coercion, and the operation of a criminal enterprise, an absolute criminal enterprise. Now, I do believe we had another witness, two more witnesses today. One was Joshua Croft. And he is and there are no, unfortunately, there are no pictures for these last two witnesses. Either the artist didn't get there, or they're just not out online for me to grab yet, So the defense didn't really make much headway with Miss Morales, in my opinion. I think the worst part was the interviews, and the jury will have to balance that out as part of credibility. Remember, they get to weigh the evidence. We see it one way, but they get to weigh the value of it themselves, what they think is important and what's not, And they don't see a lot of what we see on the outside. Actually, they see none of it, But let's get to this the digital forensic agent. Okay. He was charged with, his duties were to extract data from all of Cassie's wares that could, phones, laptops, and everything. And he testified that most of her devices were set to factory resettings, were physically damaged in one way or another. He recovered partial data, including emails under the alias of Frank Black. Now, that's important because during the raid, they found multiple prescriptions that were Sean Combs that were under the name of Frank Black. We're going to hear more testimony to collaborate that. But that name, Frank Black, that contacts Cassie regularly with threats and intimidation and things like that, as if doing it under another name that's climbed to your IP and your computer is going to save your butt. But hey, the prosecution does have a job here of proving that Frank Black is Sean Combs. And they have done that repeatedly through the emails and correspondence and phone text messaging with Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura through her own testimony itself. But now they go to the extraction of her computer equipment and everything to, on one side, make sure she's telling the truth about everything. Look for collaborating evidence of the threats that he made, any kind of emails, text message, anything they can find. Okay. They did recover, those partial emails and everything like that. But what it doesn't actually, what it did show is that there was definitely tampering with all the devices. One of the laptops was completely dented, beat up, like it had been thrown. There was a partial wipe on another. Okay. But the fact that they can tie a lot of it to this Frank guy is important, because that is the stuff there. And also they can show that there was an attempt to delete all the evidence, because that's actually what happened. And that is what he's testifying to. Now the defense is like, oh yeah, but you only got partial information. So how good is it? You only got a partial data extraction. I don't think that's going to matter. If the jury actually keys in on the name, okay, if they actually key in on the name, it's going to be important. That Frank Blank name is important because it shows, again, racketeering conspiracy. Why do you need a fake name, Mr. Combs? You're contacting the love of your life. Why you need to use a fake name? for all of this. Why you got so many fake names on pill bottles and this, that, and the other thing? Are you? Oh gosh, Mr. Combs, could you possibly be like indulging in illegal activities with a racketeering conspiracy? Yep, that's what it shows. You're using fake name to hide evidence. You're trying to delete everything on her laptop and her phones that she has nothing when she finally left you. Yep. You're trying to tamper with the evidence again. It also shows tampering of evidence. It shows that he tried to obscure. It shows an effort, a criminal effort to hide their criminal deeds. And all the defense could do on cross-examination and go, but, hey, you got incomplete data. It doesn't show everything, does it? No, it doesn't. Does that say to the jury, oh my, there must be so much more. If it shows all this bad stuff, can you just imagine what they didn't delete? I mean, that's how I would look at it. But, I mean, that's a little, yeah, I know I'm being a little catty there. But, hey, wouldn't you? I mean, to me, if I was on the jury, I'd be thinking, Yeah, okay, they caught me on camera. It wasn't me. Exactly. But, and we have one more witness. And this one, I'm glad that this is the last one I get to talk about. And I do appreciate all your patience as we go through these, and it's taking so long. But the last witness is actually a hotel manager on one of the places that Diddy liked to procure a lot. And he actually took the stand and he said that in the books that Combs books rooms under many aliases. Oh, and by the way, Frank Black is one of them. Okay. So many different ones. Okay. And that he has caused excessive damages in the building. There are notes from many people in regards to having to clean that room about always being wax spills and excessive use of oil everywhere. And the rooms are just a mess, just such a mess. So they questioned him on and on, and they went through the records that the hotel has on him. The hotel was so concerned about P. Diddy that they actually had people checking the hallways and using air fresheners because of the smells that were coming out of the room. Possibly weed or whatever, and actually to make sure that any loud noises weren't heard. But they actually had to assign somebody up there to monitor the hallway. Wow, right? They also every time he booked a room, they would have to take that room out of commission when he was done, and it would have to get a deep, and I'm using my finger quotes up here that you can't see, air quotes, a deep cleaning before the room could be put back for someone else. They took it out of circulation. And because of this, repeatedly, it didn't just happen once or twice. It was happening every time he took a room. So they actually started to add $1,000 charge to his room fees for the cleaning. $1,000 plus the cleaning charge. They charged the extra $1,000 just for the inconvenience of having to send people in there and what they would have to see and deal with. Plus, they got charged for the extra cleaning. This kind of collaborates the transportation for prostitution charge. It also just shows him as being, just tacky and all of that. It does help with the racketeering when it comes to using of the fake names. And, that actually shows that he's trying to hide some type of illegal activity. It also corroborates with the transportation for prostitution because these rooms were rented, as we know, for the freak-offs, and the freak-offs included on a regular basis through testimony through several of the witnesses, especially Cassie Ventura herself, who was involved in the transaction. who were paid to be there for the freak-offs and came from different states, and they were paid to come and participate in these activities at the bequest of Sean Combs for his pleasure, for his needs. It's what he wanted. It is not what Cassie Ventura wanted. As much as they try to put it that that's what she wanted. Okay, so summary of the impact on the verdict. Well, that so far, when I inquire of this fantastic AI that I have here, that Arnold found, it is, well, let's go over the three charges. For the racketeering and conspiracy, we've heard a lot of testimony on days 6 through 8. And I told you individually how they would. But basically, the intimidation that is put in there from Kid Cudi and the retaliation that happened, from the agent who talked about the firearms and the obliterated serial numbers and drug distribution evidence from the Miami raid. Those are the strongest points for racketeering conspiracy right now. Sex trafficking right now would be, well, the Punisher's testimony about Combs directing the sex acts, actually saying that Cassie would look to him for guidance and he was saying what he wanted done and they were to do it. And having financial control, Regina's taking out, Regina to Ventura, Cassie's mom, taking out a $20,000 loan because she was being blackmailed to pay back whatever money he had wasted on her and Cassie, or he was going to release those explicit tapes. Disgusting. And definitely sex trafficking by forced fraud and coercion. There's also plenty of evidence of assault and intimate partner violence. All of the things that were testified by Dawn Richardson in Kerry Morgan, describing personal physical abuse, and also medical documentation that was put into file during the last few days of Cassie's injuries. Okay, showing the injuries. Now, the cross-examination of picking on things like Richardson saying she was hit, that he hit her with the skillet when he threw it. Like, really? Okay. I get that. But I don't think that stands up. And framed Cassie as a willing participant over and over again, that she enjoyed it, that she's part of it. Who paid the money? Who contacted you? Who was in the room? Them trying to put in illicit photos of her scantily dressed, which was actually stopped by the judge as, what are you trying to prove here? And another time asking, about something with whether they actually tried during the cross-examination of Kid Cudi to ask if Cassie and Kid Cudi had sex. And the judge said, are you trying to sex shame the witness? You can't do that. And actually reprimanded the defense, But it shows you their mindset. They just want to blame the whole thing on Cassie. And the thing that really, and I hope that the jury is picking up on this. I hope you're all picking up on this. But based on her age, their financial disparity, the relationship in general, the power difference alone leads me to think there's no consent. I don't care if an 18-year-old is begging you and you're a 34-year-old man. You're not going to introduce them to this wild lifestyle. Like, there's some coercion going there. They don't know what they're asking for. I know that there's a touchy subject. Some people will say, nah, grown adults, they can choose what they want to do. But when you have an unequal power in a relationship, when there is authority and control of finance and power and publicity and reputation all rolled up, there's total coercion there. Whether you want to think he did it on purpose or not, there's intimidation. There's her wanting to please him because of the results. And he took advantage of it. Definitely everything we've heard to date, for me, collaborates that. Yeah. But anyway, in conclusion, because I'm going to wrap this up now. Days 6 through 9 solidified the prosecution's narrative of Combs as a coercive leader, with a capital L, of a criminal enterprise. And I say criminal enterprise. Witnesses across all roles, we're talking assistants, escorts, experts like Don Hughes, family members like Mom, okay, corroborate systematic abuse, drug trafficking, and weapon possession as a matter of course, as almost a daily event. While the defense emphasized consent in isolated domestic incidents, the breadth of the evidence, what we actually see, particularly with Kid Cudi's testimony and the raid findings, well, they strengthen the federal charges of RICO. And because in the Kid Cudi, there was violence and intimidation and retaliation, illegal forms of it. And then in the raid, we've got guns with no ID numbers on them. We have drugs and all kinds of things used in the freak off everywhere. And we have a loaded gun in one of the freak off locations, showing, well, intimidation as the go-to. In that, well, that's all I got. Are there any questions? Hey, Garris. I am actually starving, so I'm going to cut it short. I don't see any questions. I do thank you all for your time. I know this went long. 2 hours is a long time to just listen to me talk. All right. Well, yeah, Gary's, Mippet, actually, not Gary's. The rich think money solves all problems. I will say that there's quite a bit of entitlement coming from Sean Combs, thinking that he just is above all this. He's the king, acting like this is just the way it is in industry, and he has a right to it. That is all. It's been 2 hours. I did it all in 2 hours. Yep. What in the world is the defense going to do? I'm curious. Like, I would imagine they're just going to attack credibility anywhere they can. They're trying on defense, and it's not really going. Some of the most damning evidence they didn't even touch, and that is Cassie Ventura's mom and the hotel manager. Documented proof in writing. That email where he blackmailed Cassie and her mother over the freakout videos, that is very damning. And the actual damning record of his hotel, in how the condition he left those rooms, the things they had to do, the multiple names he would book everything under, that's pretty damning too. And they didn't touch it. They didn't touch it. They didn't want to open the door, And this goes on. Oh, wait, Maggie, let me see. Maggie says, and this goes on for how many more weeks? Oh, several. I believe they have a few more witnesses, and then it goes over the defense, and I believe the defense will try to drag it out so that the jury forgets about the evidence. Mark my words. We're going to see a bunch of ridiculous. Did Sean donate to the boys club? Oh, yes, he did. Did Sean, build up this artist's career, and do you like him? Yep. We're going to see how many people run away from Sean Combs over these charges, and how many are willing to put their reputations on the line to go into court and stick up for him. Okay, because he's sitting in there giving hearts to his family and blowing kisses and acting like this is all fine. He actually said out loud in court, "I love you all." Yes. Like he is a saint, Well, there are 3 separate charges, Rabbits. The main charge is RICO, racketeering. And then there is sex trafficking and then prostitution across state lines. There are 3 charges, but the RICO is the main charge. And they are using the sex trafficking and the prostitution across state lines to help contribute to the illegal activities that have to be present for the conspiracy for racketeering to exist to get them for RICO. And the reason that RICO is the main charge is because besides everything else that he's doing, like there's no statute of limitations on RICO. They can go back as long as they want. And it's not going to go away. And they get to use all the acts and tie them together as long as they're illegal and due to the criminal enterprise. And his criminal enterprise is all his businesses, is everyone around him, as they're proving with those associated just as being personal assistants and working for him. And I think we'll hear from more people on that line. All right, so let's see. Oh, thank you for the compliments, guys. Thank you, Maggie. Jin says, better than 4 hours of listening to Alessi on Cross. Well, thank you. I think that's a compliment. The longer I live, the more I hate anyone that makes over $500,000 a year. I could see that, Garris. I could see that. Yeah, it's going to be a long ride, guys. It is, you know. Also, before I go, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a warning in the use of some of the AI. Law and Crime is actually putting out AI that actually gives you the visual of what the testimony and the opening statements by both the prosecution and the defense is like. And it's a good way to get the details because they're actually using the transcript. But I refer you to a video that Moist Critical just did. You know, Penguin, Charlie. And he found an account that is actually saying they're using the transcripts, but because they put a disclaimer on it that it's only for entertainment, they're actually saying in the video that it comes right from the transcripts. And it's all false. They're saying that certain people testify. I mean, really, some people know that it's not real because Prince is dead, but they actually said that there was a recording of Prince that was entered into evidence, and that never happened. And they did this whole big video on it. And I just like, don't give those people the views. That's not only bad for the reputation of AI, that just is insulting to the true crime and to the freaking federal case itself. Like, they're making a mockery of it. They're doing it really quick to just try to make money. And, well, I just think it's disgusting. It's almost as disgusting as Diddler himself. Well, and the things that he's been accused of. It's hard for me to be not biased about what he's being accused of because, like, there's too much evidence. I've seen it from my eyes. There's just too much. Like, he's definitely guilty, but what they actually nail him for is another thing. You know what I mean? Yep. They have to actually prove the sex trafficking to get him for RICO, Gary's. RICO is what they're trying to prove. That's the main. He'll get life if he gets the RICO charge. If he's convicted of sex trafficking that is going to prove RICO. If the jury thinks he's sex trafficked and that he sex trafficked Cassie against her will, they can't deny any of the other stuff, and he will definitely go down for RICO. RICO is the main charge. That's what they want. And the other two definitely support RICO. And it's the evidence of sex trafficking, the testimony of Cassie Ventura herself, that has actually caused the RICO charge. Okay, it shows clearly coercion in all of these illegal activities. Everything's embroiled with illegal activities, intimidation. Yeah. So they're not going to ignore the sex stuff. I don't think the jury can. Let me see. I bet his insane narcissistic head, he's convinced himself he's in it. He's acting like, everybody's going to come forward with great love and nobody's going to believe this. And before trial got here, they tried quite a few things to get him out of it by saying that he was being picked on because he was a black man and he was successful and they just don't like him. I mean, he tried a lot of stuff. He couldn't get out on bail because when it came down to it, they can say whatever they want in the filings, but it came down to his actual actions and what he did even after he was arrested. That kind of convinced the judge through through what the prosecution was able to show that he just acts like a criminal. Narcissism is a hell of a drug. It sure is. Oh, Mrs. Cassandra, thanks for reminding everybody. Don't forget to come back tomorrow for Black Mirror episode 3 review. Yes, that'll be at 9 o'clock. And thanks for the reminder. I know Prince can't even defend himself. Isn't that horrible, Mrs. Cassandra, that they're doing that? That's why I wanted to bring it to you guys' attentions, Wow, the Department of Justice already has to put up with Pam Bondi and her ilk. Could we show a modicum of respect for justice, please? Exactly. That's my thing. Like, stop it. Yep. All of that control in jail. Exactly. He was actually working his little enterprise in there too. Thank you, Garris. Garris says, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Yes. And I will say that my P. Diddy stuff is probably going to be pulled from the algorithm by YouTube because they don't like the content. So if you could share it around a bit so it keeps up with the views of the rest of my stuff, I'd appreciate it. Because, man, they just think I'm just talking about the worst. And I'm not even doing it like everybody else. Like, I want to just talk about the facts. But it seems like anything to do with this case, they really, they don't want in the algorithm, Will you be put on one of Norm's lists? Probably we all will, on that end. But on that, I'm going to end it, I think. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. And 50 cents paid to you to do it, Claire, to put everybody on the list. What are you talking about? Do not Google habeas. No, I'm not going to Google it live. I don't Google live anymore since the carrot incident. Like, I had to explain that at a later date. Yeah. No. Thank you very much for your attention tonight. Sorry about the mishap about the witness and the immunity. I will strive to do better. It was a lot. Yeah. 50 cents paid you to do it. Yeah, 50 cent. I wish 50 cent paid me to do it, Mrs. Cassandra, to do Diddler streams. I wish he did. I would, actually. I would really like to talk to that man about what he knows, because I think he is one of the few people that would be honest about it and not care if anybody said anything. He really is ripping, Diddy. He really is. Send me anything you have. I could use a good laugh. I really could, especially after tonight. All right, because this is hard. I really feel for what Cassie went through. And I actually, now that her life is good, I mean, think about it, everybody. Her life is so good right now with her kids and a fine man and she has to readdress all of this because of the criminal case. She one hell of a strong person. And I know she's doing okay, but I really feel that so bad that she has to look at it all again. And she has to deal with the defense's questions and the scrutiny of the jury and the public in general. And let's just remember that most people out here on the internet, well, because you can't see them or make them accountable for the things that they say, they're pretty well horrible people most of the time. So that's why when you have something good to say, when you have some good support to show, do it. Because, man, there's some awful people out here, I mean, just dealing with my DMs today on the crap that people in our circles are exposed to and have to put up with. And they're not even celebrities or anything. I mean, most of them don't even have channels. They're just subscribers. It's just like people can just be the worst of themselves, So I want to just encourage everybody else to just, like, when somebody does something good, tell them. When you got something good to say about something that's going on, put it out there. We got to balance this bullshit somehow. And don't watch those damn channels trying to sensationalize this crap. Remember, there's a victims involved in this case, not just the defendant. There are victims. There's the other side. And when we sensationalize it, we take away from their side of it. We do. As much as we think we're supporting them, it's not that way. It doesn't feel like that to them. You understand what I mean? I want to say something really Jersey, like, capiche? You get me? Like, let me get all gangster on you. Like, do you know? Like, I'm shaking my fingers at you, very Italian style right now, people. Do not contribute to the madness, please. Give me a little help here. Thank you so much. You're going to throw me in the basement, Mrs. Cassandra? Yeah? No, I don't mean they're less. I mean, how could content creators actually attack subscribers personally is just beyond me. Like, I think that's ridiculous. That's what I meant, rabbits. I'm sorry you didn't get the context of what I was saying. All right. So on that, now I'm really ending it. That's a 15-minute goodbye instead of a 20-minute goodbye. So there you go. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow for Black Mirror, Yeah, capiche? That's what I said, rabbits. Capiche? I did. I actually said it. All right. We'll see you all later.